Good morning, friends, and welcome back to NPTEL online lectures on public speaking. You might remember well that in the previous lecture, we have talked about a very important weapon of a public speaker, and that is audience awareness and credibility. So, as a public speaker, once you know your audience members and once you have created a sort of credibility or a rapport, now is the time to deliver. But before you deliver, don't you need to prepare the matter, the content? And even if you have prepared the content, I mean, while you were doing a lot of research, as I mentioned in the previous lecture, that one has to gather a lot of information, but mere gathering is not enough. This gathering is, the gathering of materials rather, is to be organized. They are actually to be woven, they are actually to be tailored, just like a beautiful shirt that you are wearing. If you go into the background of it, you might have found that the tailor might first have cut the cloth into certain pieces, and when he had got all the pieces, now he is in a position to organize it. In the same way, as a public speaker, you are going to organize the content that you have prepared. But how will you create the content? From where will you get the materials? Of course, you are blessed enough to be in an age where technology is every now and then at your beck and call. And most of the time you spend with technology going to several websites, going to several softwares, going to try your hand at several topics as well, but the question is it adequate to gather material only from several internet sources? Because the authenticity comes into question. And that is why in this lecture we shall be talking about the various ways not only of creating the content, but also of checking the authenticity of it. Now, when we talk about the sources for content creation, even in olden days, our teachers used to say, how many hours do you spend in library? To the younger generation today, the term library may appear to be very redundant, but still serious readers pay a visit to the library. Library is such a place where you can get all sorts of information. Even nowadays we have digital libraries, fine, but even through digital libraries we are actually trying to get a sort of content. So, the very first thing in this regard, when we are going to create the content and we are going to look for information, is the library research. With actually time which has nowadays been impacted by internet, of course, most of us feel that the importance of library over the years has belittled, because everyone wants to get things just on the click of a mouse. But mouses at times cannot provide you the authentic information, since everyone has got the right to click a mouse and visit several websites. But can we really ensure the authenticity of whatever we get? People at times fail to realize that libraries are still indispensable. Now, think of an incident that you get to read one newspaper every day, but then if you really want to verify certain things, don't you feel that you need to read some more newspapers? And library is such a place where you can get all sorts of newspapers. Like that, it is library where you can get books of all titles, of all subjects, with different references, fine. But then, do we really have the time to visit libraries? Some of the features which can actually help us even when we visit the library actually have to be taken into consideration. You know, since most of us run short of time, and that is why perhaps we do not want to go to the library, but there is actually an advantage in visiting a library, because the main person of the library, I mean the librarian, he is actually such a person, they all the time will help you and can tell you where or in which section you can get the relevant book of a particular subject or of a particular area. People usually refrain from troubling a person in a silent library, but librarians are actually trained, they are actually taught to cater to our requirements when it comes to books and locating sources. Of course, even when you go to visit libraries digitally, there also, I mean, it is the same process. It can lead you to several sections, subsections, you can go to several catalogs, you can visit, I mean the same process is being followed, and it is only the librarians that can help you. So, it is always better, especially for the new guys, the youngsters, to take heed of all these and visit a library. It is library where you can get the periodical databases. Nowadays, since people do not have much time and they do not want to go to the books which were either published in the 1970s or 80s, fine, but library is such a place where you can get even old books. My dear friends, the place I belong to, I am proud to say that in our library we have the Shakespeare's folio. Now think of it, in today's age when one simply believes in a sort of internet, it actually at times becomes very difficult to get those books which were actually written originally and were kept in the library. And you know, the database, the periodical database, it can actually help you to locate a magazine, and not only the magazine but the journal articles also. You know, it is always said that when you are conducting a research also, people believe that you should provide the updated information. But in order to provide the updated information, it does not mean that information which were in the past that has become irrelevant. My dear friends, research is an ongoing process, and actually it can always help you. You can always understand the gap when you come to know about a book or a periodical, say of 19th century, 20th century. After obtaining the citations of the desired articles, one can request, and many libraries also have the facilities that if you really want to download and then you also want the printed version, so you can be allowed. So, you can download the full article if the library has got access to it. Nowadays even when you really want to take some printout of a journal, because you know most of the international journals where you do not have the accessibility, it is only the library, because the library has got the licenses, fine, and then if you are a member of that, you can also be allowed to get an access to, sometimes if the need be, you can also get the same paper being printed. So, in certain cases only abstracts are available online, and if you really want the entire paper, fine, sometimes we also get requests when our abstracts are already there either on ResearchGate or on some other site, many people often request for the full paper, fine. So, at times it is not possible also for many of us to provide the full paper, but in libraries one can have the access to. So, one should never cite an article, because nowadays youngsters, they are always in such a hurry that they may at times cite only an abstract, and that may actually impact their research. They can be questioned at times. If you do not know what has been discussed in this paper, how are you going to cite it only on the basis of the abstract? That is why it is always beneficial for you as a researcher, and every public speaker, while he or she is researching, one needs to be very careful of all these realities. Then comes the catalog. Now, what is a catalog? It is actually the list. The catalog lists all the books in the library along with their availability status. You are not the only one doing a research on a particular area, on a particular topic. There might be other people also. That is why library can tell you whether that particular book or that particular journal is presently available with them or not. Sometimes it might have been taken by somebody else, so they can provide you the time limit or the time span when you can get it. One can find books using limited information like name of the book or the author or the publisher or the year of publication. Now, here you can find that how, when you are going to visit a library, fine, it is with the stock register nowadays, which has already been digitalized, fine, and with the number, ascension number, call number, and then they also provide you the status. So, that can in a way provide you a sort of security, and it can also help you in the days to come. Now, as I had been saying, that as an individual you can have access only to one or two newspapers, and that also to the place where you belong. But if I really want to, or if you really want to read a newspaper, say like the Washington Post, or you want to read a newspaper from a different country, I think it is library which in most of the cases might have this accessibility. These newspapers are invaluable research on diverse topics ranging from history, contemporary politics, opinions, fine. Sometimes you are conducting a research on the columns of a particular author, fine. Where can you get? Now, nowadays it has been the tendency of most of us that when you have a pile of newspapers, you actually want to destroy it, but in libraries they are always preserved. So, every significant information, even about trivial incidents, they can find a mention as a dedicated column in the newspaper. So, when you are carrying out a research as a public speaker, when you are going to speak on a historical topic or say on a scientific topic, from where you want to sow the trend on a particular topic or area or subject or whatsoever, I think newspapers can come to your aid in a very effective manner, my dear friend. Now, in many cases, you also can be a resource. How? You can capitalize on your personal knowledge. Suppose at times you have also got an opportunity to hear from a person who actually triumphed out of a very serious disease, and he is at times invited to deliver talks. Nowadays, if you are reading newspapers, you can find that there are several management gurus, several people who started their own ventures and they became very successful as a startup. They are being invited. So, as a public speaker, if you have also got that experience of such a disease or such a profession where you have triumphed or excelled over, perhaps you can bring a life to it. So, in order to bring any speech for that matter, or talk or presentation to life, one must add some personal touch to the knowledge. Maybe it is your personal experience. Say for example, a survivor of a serious disease can explain what are the various phases. At times it has also been seen that some persons who have already lost some of their near and dear ones, either because of a COVID or anything like that, fine, they can also give a talk on creating a sort of awareness among people as to how they can keep themselves away from the dangers of this pandemic and all. So, as a person also you can capitalize on your own knowledge. My dear friends, any speech is required to have a sort of color, not only color but also emotion. So, if a person who has recovered from a serious illness, you might have also got an access to some of the books where they write that how one got succeeded even from a serious disease like cancer, and people often are attracted to read that because such a person can give the real account of it. So, and through the emotion, fine, where experience plays a very exemplary role. Actually, it is not mandatory while giving such a sort of speech or a talk that one becomes very heart-wrenching, fine, in terms of emotionality because one has suffered. Personal angle can simply act as an efficient support. One need not be very much emotional while doing so, because you are trying to disseminate your own experience of how you survived despite the dangers of such a dreadful disease. Fine? Can you really not find some food for thought in it? The way a person puts his own experience as a public speaker, and through that he is actually trying not only to excite, not only to entertain, but also to motivate people towards a sort of startup business. Now, when we come to the reference section of a library, which is very important, because as a public speaker you will get the chance to speak on different occasions and on different topics. Sometimes you will be invited to talk on a great person's life, fine, especially on the Jayantis, anniversaries, whatsoever. So, in that you can right away go to the reference section where not only will you get the information regarding several biographies, autobiographies, fine. At times you can also get the yearbooks if a person is conducting a research in economics and wants to show the economic trends of every year. If a person is carrying out his research or going to deliver a talk on population control over the years, naturally these annual yearbooks will be of great help to them. And then there are encyclopedias, and of course, as I have been saying, that as a public speaker you have to win, you have to triumph, and you can also triumph by making even a dry subject becoming very interesting, and for that you need to refer to certain quotations. It is library where you will also get in the reference section a book of quotations, and quotations for all occasions, quotations of all great people, quotations not only from science, from literature, from philosophy, from geology, from biotechnology, I mean from diverse fields. So, isn't library such a big thing that can help, and that can help us prepare a beautiful talk of ours, my dear friend? I mean, when we go to the specialized research sources, nowadays we have virtual libraries. You can also become a member of such virtual libraries, and through the search engines you can get yourself in a position to find what is there on the internet. But my dear friend, time and again I must tell you that while you are going to take information or culling information from the internet, you must be sure about the authenticity of this. Moreover, when you are going to deliver a talk on some of the government policies, you once again require a sort of data that is authentic. And government sources and documents can also be found on government e-resources, where I think the data will be authentic, you can refer to. Because if you are going to produce a fake data or a data that is not verified, I think as a public speaker you are going to sink your own reputation. Then there are multicultural resources also, through which you can get to know about different cultural dimensions. If you are working in the area of sociology or you are going to give a talk on culture, there are multiple sites which are catering to the multicultural diversity. But in order to verify it, once again I will advise you to go through the books that can be at your own disposal. I mean, the information that we get through internet sources have to be verified, have to have a sort of authenticity. Now, who had said this? What sort of research has gone in this area? And what is actually the rank of the person? What is the stature of the person? Fine. And in which year was this? Is the research that he conducted in the year 1820, is it still valuable? What more things have been added to it? So, authorship is very important, because we must admit the fact that internet is a good slave, but it is actually a very bad master. Fine. It actually provides you lots of information, but the information that exists electronically, of course, we may be able to find them, but then you need to understand that how you can segregate jewels from junk on the internet. Because of the easy accessibility, everyone can add to. Sometimes you all, and we are living in an age of fake news also at times, my dear friend. So, let us guard ourselves. And how can we do that? From knowing the authorship, the sponsorship, and also the recency. How relevant it is. Is it still relevant? Fine. So, if you keep these things into consideration, I think you are going to gather a data that has a sort of authenticity. Now, when you have done all these sorts of research, now is the time you created an outline, because an outline will serve as a reminder to you while you are preparing. And we have seen many speakers having on a short clip the outline of his talk. If he is not going to speak with the help of all these technical gadgets and whatsoever, then he brings on a piece of paper, and on the piece of paper he has the outline of his entire talk. So, unlike a formal written outline, speaking outline is solely developed, and one does not write everything here. What one writes? One may write keynotes. So, as a public speaker, you need to see the things which can help you and which you often tend to forget. I mean, sometimes we have seen people forgetting even the real quotations, and they provide a quotation where some word either has been left or some word has been added. So, that way it is going to harm the reputation of the person that you are quoting. So, keywords and phrases which can highlight the main ideas. A formal written outline of the whole speech or a talk is fairly condensed again. So, as a public speaker, even when you have created an outline, because you cannot bring a whole set of pages or the entire speech. So, it has to be condensed. So, have a condensed outline for speaking, and that is actually later laid out. Either if you feel that it is very mandatory for you because you do not remember everything, let you have the opportunity or the facility of bringing cards. Of course, in today's age it may appear to be very redundant, but still there are traditional speakers who bring some cards, and with the help of the cards they keep on, because they want that their talk or their speech or their presentation might be very systematic. Speaking cards help to make a fluent and a timely presentation, my dear friends. And through this you can always ensure that your audience members are in sync with you. You are not going to lose the battle rather you have been able to sustain their interest. Sometimes many speakers also may bring notes, but then when you are going to bring notes, see to it that not everything should be written. Otherwise, non-verbally you will be a failure, because the audience members also want to see the speaker who is addressing. So, prepare a speech or a talk using separate headings and subheadings just for your own ease, just for your own help and for your own memory, because at times your memory can fail. The prepared outline should only have brief notes, but then they should be straight. I mean, they should be very much focused, concentrated. One can also add, I have seen many speakers when they prepare their notes, they also see to it that they write pauses where they can pause, where they can give a longer pause, where they can become aggressive, but then initially you cannot apply all these tactics. Please ensure that the prepared outline notes are legible even for your future time reference. And most importantly, one has, as a public speaker, to practice or to rehearse time and again, because preparing from your notes where your own eyes are stuck in it, that can actually create a lot of damage to you as regards your reputation. Cue cards you will of course bring, but when you bring cue cards, you should also have the care to provide some signposts. We shall discuss about signposts in some other lecture, where we are going to talk about the connectives. Fine, connectives are very essential, otherwise the entire talk will become very monotonous. The keywords have to be identified, no doubt, but then when you are writing all these things, as a public speaker yourself, you ought to know what you have written. Sometimes it so happens that people write and they themselves are not sure about what they have written. So, this can create a sort of damage, and this can make you very much embarrassed at the time of it. Many people often use color codes. I have also been provided a colored pen where if I have to do something, I can mark it. But then if I am using a note, what I will do, I will write it in a different color so that my memory also gets colored, my dear friend. Now, when you have done all that, you are to support, and there are several supporting ways through you can explain, you can provide statistics if it is related to data. You can also provide parallels, analogies, testimony. I mean, you can provide justification as to what you are speaking, because a public speaker also has to provide the sort of argument which he had loaded with in his content. Otherwise, it will appear that it is just a mere concoction and not logically approved, not logically supported. My dear friends, apart from all these, as a public speaker, you can also have some other things, but need to know that you are aware of how they can be used. They can be objects, they can be posters, graphs, charts, videos, clips, and of course, PowerPoint is the easiest way one can use. But while using PowerPoint presentation or bringing slides, one needs to ensure that one knows how many slides one has brought. And if he has brought it, is he really going to explain? Because at times people write everything, but then they go unexplained, and as a speaker, your reputation suffers, my dear friend. So, when you are going to organize, please believe in a pattern, and the patterns can be fivefold. That means it can be spatial, I mean distance wise, it can be logical, it can be cause effect, it can be chronological, I mean on the basis of time, it can also be problem solution. So, whatever appears to you to be the most appropriate, you go for that, because the task of a public speaker lies not only in organizing the content from various sources, but also organizing it very systematically. If you have been able to do that, I think there are chances that you will never fail as a public speaker, because as a public speaker, there are certain things which Monroe shows and says that in order to keep your motivational level in the best possible manner, a public speaker should first try to grab the attention, and once you have grabbed, you are going to define the need, not only define but satisfy the need, provide visual solutions if any, and then the final one, that is call to action. So, if you have been able to do all that, I think you are in a better position to deliver a talk that will bring you laurels from all the corners of your audience members. My dear friends, we have to come to end, but in the end is always the beginning. And as a public speaker, you need to understand that every speech ought to be put together like a living creature who has got life. And nothing can have more life than a speech or a presentation where the speaker ensures to have a sort of coordination between what he says and what is actually understood by the audience, because communication for that matter is a two-way process where the speaker and the listener, speaker and the audience see, and they fight for a cause where both the parties are looking for a solution, and the solution lies in satisfying the crowd by providing the content in the most contented manner. With this, we come to the end of this talk. I hope you will next time be able to create your own content, and you will make everyone contented and not discontented. Thank you very much. Have a nice day.